Was Amanda's death a calculated attack, or the result of a bizarre accident? It was love at first sight when Amanda met Lee Anthony in 2005. They soon married and spent almost every minute together in their cozy home in a working-class neighborhood in Calgary, Canada, with several rescued pets. In late October 2012, Lee and Amanda are getting ready for a trip up north to help Lee's mom on the anniversary of his dad's death. But as the weekend of October 24 arrives, Amanda experiences a painful migraine, so she decides to stay home alone. This marks the first weekend they have ever been apart. Lee leaves early Friday morning, October 23, to make the 8-hour drive to his mom's house in Saskatchewan. Lee and Amanda text back and forth several times on Saturday. When Lee calls Amanda early Saturday night, she reports that her migraines are better and everything seems normal, until Lee hears their dog, Ruby, barking excitedly. Amanda yells, "Shut up, Ruby." The dog yelps, and then the phone goes dead. Lee's calls and texts to Amanda during the next 24 hours go unanswered. At first, he assumes her phone is dead or giving her trouble. But by Sunday evening, he's worried and decides to cut his trip short, drive home, and surprise her the following day. But it's Lee who's surprised when he arrives home and doesn't find Amanda in the living room, kitchen, bathroom, or upstairs bedrooms, though her purse and keys are on the dining room table. Their dog, Ruby, and the 2 cats, Gizmo and Meatloaf, are in a frenzy. Their food and water bowls are empty, and there's dog urine on the floor. The only place he hasn't checked is the basement. As Lee turns on the light in the basement stairway, he's horrified. At the bottom of the stairs, blood soaks the floor and is splattered up onto the walls. Bloody drag marks lead to a small anteroom off the main basement space. It's here where he finds Amanda dead lying on the floor in a huge, smeared pool of blood. He's barely coherent as he runs upstairs to call 911. An autopsy places Amanda's time of death around 7 p.m. on Saturday, October 24, which means her death coincides with the time of her call with Lee that ended abruptly. When detectives arrive on the scene, they see what certainly appears to be signs of a violent encounter, and a homicide investigation is opened. Amanda's broken cell phone is found on the floor, and a dining room chair has been tipped over. There appear to be drag marks where her body was moved from one spot in the basement to another, suggesting a struggle had taken place. The basement floor is literally covered in blood, signs of a murderous encounter. Or is it? Strangely, there are no signs of robbery or forced entry. There are several inexplicable oddities at the scene, including 2 bloody bare footprints on the basement floor at the bottom of the stairs, facing the steps, as though Amanda had stood at the bottom of the stairs, about to go up, but never made the climb. Investigators dive into the couple's relationship history but find no sign of distress, let alone any domestic violence or police records. They find no motive for Lee to have killed his wife or any evidence that points to him. With Lee cleared and no other suspects, the investigators must consider alternative theories. A biomechanics expert offers the possibility that Amanda's death was simply an accidental fall. At first, this seems outrageous and hard to accept, given the bloody crime scene, but no offender's DNA is found in the pools of blood in the basement. Amanda's case has been presented to multiple forensics and investigative groups yet remains a puzzling mystery. Investigators eagerly wait for something or someone to come forward with a fresh lead. Anyone with information about Amanda's death is asked to contact police by calling 403-266-1234. Tips can also be submitted anonymously to Crime Stoppers through 1-800-222-8477, www.calgarycrimestoppers.org, or via the app P3 Tips. Did a friendly school librarian looking forward to retirement shoot himself in the head with a shotgun while perched on his dinghy? Or was he murdered by someone with something to hide? Life seemed very good for Patrick Lee Mullins. He had a happy marriage, 2 sons he adored, and retirement from a life of teaching on the near horizon. He had so many plans that he didn't know which one to dive into first. There was a 30th wedding anniversary trip coming up, a business venture with his brother doing what they loved best, fixing old motors and boats, and future grandchildren. It was an ordinary Sunday afternoon on January 26, 2013, when Patrick decided to take his old stump knocker fishing boat out for a quick spin to run gas through its engine. But he never returned, and as the afternoon turned into night, Patrick's wife, Jill, grew increasingly concerned. She called her son Miles and Patrick's brother, Gray, to take a boat out to see if they could find him. When midnight approached, Jill finally called 911. The Coast Guard, Manatee County Sheriff's Marine Patrol, and Florida's Fish and Wildlife Commission began an exhaustive search at first light that included helicopters, search and rescue vessels, 18 surface units, and AC-130 aircraft equipped with advanced FLIR technology. They covered over 2,000 square miles. Patrick's boat was discovered around 11 a.m., floating out to sea, and there was no sign of Patrick, other than his straw hat and glasses. When detectives checked out the boat back at the Coast Guard station, they found no sign of foul play and assumed Patrick must have fallen overboard. 7 days later, a fisherman found Patrick's body floating near the opening to Tampa Bay, in 4 feet of water, attached to a 25-pound anchor, and wrapped up in rope like a gruesome package. He'd been shot in the head with a shotgun and strangely, his body showed few signs of decomposition or predator activity, given how long his body had been in the water. At first, detectives leaned towards suicide as Patrick's manner of death, but Patrick didn't own a gun and there were no records that he had recently purchased a gun. Investigators and the medical examiner also said they were inclined to rule his death as suicide because Patrick lived a relatively safe and sedate lifestyle, and because of the way the anchor rope was tied, his arms were free, suggesting that he could have tied the anchor around himself. They also found Pat to be an unlikely murder victim because he didn't seem to have any enemies and didn't engage in high-risk activities. Friends and family report they never saw Pat depressed and he had everything to live for. Patrick's family believes he encountered some illegal activity on the river during his outing and was killed to silence him. Due to his family's persistence, Patrick's manner of death has been officially ruled undetermined, and an outside forensic expert who was recently brought in to examine the case files reconstructed aspects of Patrick's death and found it difficult to rule out murder. Click here to submit a tip. Unlock more clues at tudum.com/solvethemystery. David Carter seemed to have it all. The 39-year-old single father was hardworking, good-looking, kind-hearted, smart and a role model for his 16-year-old son, DJ. Though DJ's mom, Samia, and David were not together, the two were on good terms and shared custody of DJ. David was living in Melvindale, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. He worked full-time at a seating automotive manufacturing plant but also owned and operated Lavish Habits, a casual clothing line. The center of David's life, however, was his son DJ. In March of 2018, David and Tammy Williams started dating. The two had attended the same high school and reconnected at a friend's birthday party. A former travel agent, Tammy was working as a phlebotomist and had 2 children of her own. By September, after dating for 6 months, it was apparent to David's friends and family that David was growing tired of Tammy. She rarely left his apartment and became extremely jealous and possessive when David was around any other women, even his cousins. Her clingy nature grated on David to the point that friends believed he was trying to end the relationship. On Friday night, September 28, 2018, David and his extended family attended DJ's high school football game. Tammy chose to sit alone rather than with David. Though nobody said it out loud, the family found the situation strange and assumed there was trouble between the couple. The next night, Saturday, around 10:30 p.m., David called his sister Tasia and asked if she would edit a video from the game so he could post it online. She got the feeling he was alone, and he mentioned that he had to be at work at 5 a.m. the next day. The following morning, Sunday, David never showed up for work and uncharacteristically, he failed to notify his employer or coworkers. That afternoon, September 30th, DJ's mom received an unusual text from David, stating he was sick and asked DJ not to come over for his usual Sunday sleepover. David missed work on Monday, and finally on Tuesday, co-workers notified David's family, who filed a missing persons report. Searching his apartment, they found a red splotch on the carpet beneath his bed, a hole in the mattress, and what appeared to be a bullet hole in the wall. While family and friends frantically searched for David, his girlfriend, Tammy Williams, went to work as if nothing had happened. The woman who saw David almost daily the past 6 months seemed unfazed that her boyfriend was missing. On Monday, October 1st, a road crew working along I-75 in Findlay, Ohio, spotted a discarded sleeping bag beside the highway. Inside was the lower part of the body of a black male, with a bulldog tattoo on one calf. Over the next 2 weeks, 2 more bags containing body parts were found along I-75. The coroner determined they belonged to the same man, who was identified as David Carter. He had died of a gunshot wound to the head. Tammy Williams was arrested and questioned, but was released after 72 hours. On December 20, when police finally issued a warrant for Tammy's arrest, charging her with first-degree homicide, disinterment, mutilation of a dead body, and tampering with evidence, she was nowhere to be found. Police believe Tammy Williams killed David Carter on Saturday night or early Sunday morning, perhaps as he slept, dismembered his body, then deposited his body parts along I-75 in Ohio. Tammy Williams was seen in Ann Arbor, Michigan in mid-October 2018. There she withdrew a substantial amount of money from an ATM inside a local bar. She then boarded a train to Penn Station, NY, and spent the night at the Neptune Motel in Brooklyn, paying for her room in advance with $100 cash. It's after that her trail then disappeared. Tammy Renee Williams is 5 feet 5 inches and weighs about 190 pounds. She has a large rose tattoo running from her shoulder down her left arm and may have blonde or black hair. She is an experienced world traveler and has relatives in Atlanta and New York. She is a member of the Order of the Eastern Star, and authorities believe it's possible someone within the organization may be helping her, unaware she is wanted for murder. Tammy Williams should be considered armed and dangerous. There is a $10,000 reward for information leading to the capture of Tammy Renee Williams. Where is the man who disappeared after the bodies of his wife and 4 children were found buried under their backyard porch? Xavier Dupont de Ligons hails from an aristocratic French family with an impressive lineage. Xavier and his wife, Ange Hodanger, have 4 children, Arthur, Thomas, Anne, and Benoit. They live in an upscale townhouse in the center of Nantes, where their children attend private schools and the family goes to church together. On the surface, they seem happy. Yet despite his privileged upbringing, Xavier has had little success in his own professional life. Few people are aware that he is struggling financially. Xavier manages to maintain an appearance of wealth by borrowing money from family and friends, to make ends meet until his ruse starts to unravel. Journalist Anne-Sophie Martin retraces Xavier's last movements in 2011, suggesting that he meticulously planned the murders of his family. After inheriting a .22 rifle from his father, Xavier purchases bullets and a silencer. He practices at a gun range multiple times between March 26 and April 1. He also buys large bin liners, adhesive plastic paving slabs, cement, a shovel, and a hoe, plus 4 bags of lime, all at different hardware shops around Nantes. On Sunday, April 3, the couple and 3 of their children go to dinner and the movies. At 10:37 p.m., Xavier leaves an eerie message on his sister, Christine's, voicemail that says he is going to put the kids to sleep. The next day, Arthur, Anne, and Benoit are absent from school and Agnes doesn't show up for work. Xavier calls to say everyone is ill and will be staying home for a few days. The next day, Xavier calls Thomas at his boarding school to say his mother has been in an accident and he should return home immediately. Xavier picks up Thomas at the train station, and Thomas is never seen again. Days later, Xavier, the immediate family and close friends receive a letter from Xavier saying that he has been working covertly for the American Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, and the entire family has relocated to the United States, as part of the Federal Witness Protection Program. He says they will be out of contact for a few years. Xavier has closed all bank accounts, terminated the lease on their house, and sent final payments to all the children's schools. He leaves instructions about how to dispose of the few remaining household items and cars. After a few days, neighbors grow suspicious of the shuttered house and call the police, requesting a welfare check. After several futile visits, one police officer notices wet cement under the back porch. When they dig, they uncover the corpses of the 5 family members and their 2 dogs, buried under a fresh slab of cement. They have all been shot with a .22 rifle. Xavier is nowhere to be found, so an international warrant is issued for his arrest. Reports start to come in about Xavier's whereabouts. Authorities learn that on April 12 he stayed at a 5-star resort in Toulouse. On April 14 he was caught on CCTV withdrawing money from an ATM, and on April 15 he was last seen by a hotel security camera, walking toward the mountains. Despite several alleged sightings over the past few years, Xavier has not been seen or heard from ever again. Did he commit suicide in the mountains? Authorities searched the area for weeks and found no sign of Xavier. Or is he a fugitive on the run? Many believe this is the most likely theory. What really happened to the lost crew of the Casey Nicole? On April 12, 1990, 4 commercial fishermen prepared to embark on a 7-day expedition in the Atlantic. The captain was 23-year-old Billy Joe Neesmith. The crew included his brother, Nathan, his nephew, Keith Wilkes, and a friend, Franklin Brantley. In the late afternoon, they set off on the Casey Nicole, a snapper boat, owned by a man named Doug Tyson. The boat had recently spent 5 weeks in dry dock for maintenance. Nathan Neesmith was at the helm. I guess it was somewhere around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. It was still dark. I had got up and was operating the boat, and the boat just seemed to be sluggish, like it wanted to bust through the waves, kind of like a submarine or something. It didn't want to ride over the waves. So I told my brother. He was laying in the bunk. I woke him up. I said something's wrong with the boat. Nathan then took his brother to the control panel. It was there that they noticed the Casey Nicole was riding unusually deep in the water. They then checked the bow where the other crew members were sleeping. What Nathan saw surprised him. When we turned on the light, we noticed there was water about a foot deep down in the bunks where they were at. To make matters worse, the boat's pumps were inoperable. In order to prevent the boat from sinking, Nathan and his crew had to bail the water out with buckets. And we got in a line and started passing the bucket and trying to bail the boat out. In the meantime, we took the life raft out. It was a 2-man life raft. We'd been hollering, "Mayday," on the radio. We had Billy Joe on it, working it. Never got anywhere with that. And the engine finally stalled. A man in an orange life vest holding onto the overturned hull of a ship. Nathan located the Casey Nicole. All power on the Casey Nicole was lost. The radio was useless. Nathan and his crew had no choice but to abandon ship. Life raft was kind of rotten. It had a hole on the side of it, up on the top. We don't really know what happened there, but we do know that it had a hole in it about the size of a quarter. By sunrise, the life raft was sinking fast. Then, salvation came floating by. It was the hatch cover from the Casey Nicole. The 4 men tied the raft to the hatch cover and climbed aboard. Then, Nathan saw the hull of the Casey Nicole in the distance. It looked like it was maybe 3 or 4 miles from us. I said I don't know what kind of chance we got, but at least maybe one of us can make it to the boat and get some kind of help. Well, that's what I struck out to do. And they started hollering, "No, no, no, you come back. If we separate up, we going to be split up and ain't no telling what can go wrong." Without heeding the warnings of his fellow crewmen, Nathan swam to the stern of the sunken boat. I just kept swimming and kept swimming. I swam from about 9 o'clock that morning, and just before dark that afternoon, I got to where I thought the boat was. I drank so much salt water trying to swim in it, and I was just real weak. As darkness fell, Nathan lost sight of his companions. He spent a long harrowing night clinging to the hull of the Casey Nicole. But the next morning, a freighter passed within 3 miles of Nathan. Looked like it made about 4 stops, maybe 5 stops. And each time it would stop or circle. And it was in the direction where my other mates were, so I figured that maybe it had stopped to pick them up. The freighter continued its odd movement for nearly 3 hours, then disappeared. For 2.5 days, Nathan drifted and prayed that the Casey Nicole would stay afloat. Suddenly, a large wood and styrofoam bait box broke loose from the boat's deck and popped to the surface, and I swam over to it. I got to the front of it, and bless God, the whole front was out. I mean, it was just like a boat to me. It was really hot. I mean, I was getting real sunburnt. My skin was turning real red, and I was real close to dead. And I remember saying, "God, please let me go home to my wife and kids." At 10 a.m. on April 15, 1990, Nathan Neesmith was finally rescued, 20 miles off the coast of Georgia. He had been adrift without food or water for 4 days. But despite a large-scale search, the other fishermen were never found by the Coast Guard. Still, Nathan and his family never gave up hope. Then, one day Nathan's sister Anita received a curious phone call. According to Anita, the male caller spoke Spanish and seemed unable to understand English. All this person would keep saying was repeating our phone number and saying our name, and that's all. And we just kept saying hello, hello, and it was just cut off, static cut off. That same day, an unusual call also came into the home of Doug Tyson, owner of the ill-fated Casey Nicole. Once again, the caller was a man. And according to Tyson, the only English words he knew were Doug's name and telephone number. We didn't say anything about the call when we got it. After that, About 6 weeks, we were down visiting with the Neesmith family. And they started telling us about their call. And after they got through I asked how long ago was this. They thought back a minute and said about 6 weeks. I looked at my wife, she looked at me and I said yeah. Over the next year, 5 more calls came in, 3 to Anita and 2 to the Tysons. Finally, on March 6, 1991, Anita received a call in which the caller spoke a single sentence in English. Very simple words, just said I'm bringing him home. That was it. After only a brief moment, the connection was lost. There have been no calls since. What really happened to the lost crewmen of the Casey Nicole? Officially, Billy Joe Neesmith, Keith Wilkes, and Franklin Brantley are presumed dead. Unofficially, there is reason to hope that they may still be alive.